The rain was relentless, hammering the windshield as I drove through the fog-choked streets of Willow Creek, Virginia. My heart thudded louder than the wipers, each beat whispering a question I wasn't ready to answer. Why did I come back? 10 years had passed since I last saw Julian, my childhood best friend, but the ache of his absence never dulled. I was 16 when I left this town, my family fleeing the weight of small-town whispers and my father's debts. Julian and I had been inseparable. 2 kids sharing comic books, stolen sips of cheap soda, and dreams too big for this place. But the night I left, I didn't say goodbye. Couldn't. Not after what happened between us under the oak tree by Miller's Pond, when our laughter turned to silence, and his hand lingered too long in mine. Now, at 26, I was back. Ethan Caldwell, prodigal son, returning not for family but for him. Julian's email had arrived last week, out of the blue. I'm getting married. Come to the house. Please. The words were polite, distant, but they burned. Married. To whom? Why? I gripped the steering wheel tighter, the neon glow of a diner flickering past. Willow Creek hadn't changed. Same cracked sidewalks, same sleepy charm, but I had, or so I thought. The house came into view, a 2-story craftsman with peeling blue paint and a porch that sagged like it carried the weight of our past. I parked, my breath catching as I saw him through the rain. Julian stood under the porch light, taller now, his dark hair longer, curling at the nape of his neck. His sharp jawline and deep brown eyes were the same, but there was a hardness there, a shadow I didn't recognize. He waved, a small, hesitant gesture, and my chest tightened. Ethan, he said as I stepped onto the porch, my sneakers squelching. His voice was low, warm, but guarded. You came. Didn't think I would? I forced a smile, my duffel bag heavy in my hand. He shrugged, a flicker of something, hurt, maybe, crossing his face. It's been a while. Inside, the house smelled of cedar and old books, just as I remembered. Photos lined the walls. Julian as a kid, gap-toothed and grinning. His mom, who'd passed when we were 12, and newer ones with people I didn't know. A woman with bright red hair and a wide smile appeared in several, her arm around Julian. My stomach twisted. Was this her? The fiancé? Nice place, I said, setting my bag down. The living room was cozy, cluttered with mismatched furniture and vinyl records. A half-empty wine glass sat on the coffee table, lipstick smudged on the rim. Thanks, Julian said, shoving his hands in his pockets. It's home. The silence stretched, heavy with things unsaid. I wanted to ask about the email, the wedding, the years we'd lost. Instead, I said, You look good. He laughed short and sharp. Liar. I look tired. You do? I admitted, and we both chuckled, the tension easing for a moment. But then the front door swung open, and a woman burst in, shaking rain from her coat. Jules, you didn't tell me we had company. She was the woman from the photos, her red hair damp, her green eyes bright with curiosity. She extended a hand. I'm Mara. You must be Ethan. I shook her hand, my throat tight. Yeah, nice to meet you. Mara's smile was warm, but her gaze darted to Julian, searching. Jules talks about you all the time. Childhood hero, right? Julian flushed, turning to the kitchen. Anyone want coffee? I'm good, I said, my eyes following him. Mara watched me, her expression unreadable. The night unfolded slowly, the 3 of us dancing around truths none of us were ready to face. Mara was charming, a graphic designer who loved punk music and spicy food. She and Julian had been together 3 years, engaged for 6 months. She told stories with animated hands, laughing easily, but I noticed how Julian's smiles never reached his eyes. He was playing a part, And I knew it because I'd seen the real him. Under that oak tree when we were 16, when he'd whispered, "Don't leave me." Dinner was takeout pizza, the conversation light but strained. Mara asked about my life in Chicago, my job as a freelance photographer. I kept it vague, not wanting to admit I was drifting, chasing moments through a lens but never holding on to them. Julian stayed quiet, picking at his food. "So," Mara said, leaning back in her chair, "what was Jules like as a kid? Spill the dirt." I grinned, glancing at Julian. He was trouble. Stole my Spider-Man comics, crashed my bike into a ditch. Lies. Julian interrupted, but he was smiling now, real and unguarded. For a second, it was just us, two kids again, laughing over stupid memories. Mara watched, her smile faltering. As the night grew late, Mara yawned and excused herself to bed, leaving Julian and me alone. The rain had stopped, and the house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. We sat on the couch, a bottle of whiskey between us, the air thick with the past. "Why'd you invite me?" I asked finally, my voice low. Julian stared at his glass, swirling the amber liquid. "I needed to see you." Before he trailed off, his jaw tight. "Before you get married?" The words tasted bitter. He nodded, still not meeting my eyes. "Mara's great. She's safe. She loves me. And you?" I pressed, my heart pounding. "Do you love her?" He looked at me then, his eyes raw, unguarded. I thought I could. I thought I could be someone else. Someone normal. The word hit like a punch. Normal. I knew what he meant. The weight of this town, the expectations, the fear that had kept us silent all those years ago. I wanted to reach for him, to pull him back to that moment under the oak tree. But I didn't. Not yet. "Julian," I said, my voice breaking, "you don't have to be anyone else." He shook his head, standing abruptly. "You don't get it, Ethan. You left. You got out. I stayed." The accusation stung, but I didn't argue. He was right. I'd run, and he'd stayed, carrying the weight of this place alone. "Let's talk tomorrow," he said, turning toward the stairs. "Guest rooms down the hall." I watched him go, my chest aching with everything I hadn't said. The house settled around me, its walls holding secrets I wasn't sure I was ready to uncover. But one thing was clear. This night wasn't over, and neither was our story. The guest room was small, its single window overlooking the backyard where Julian and I used to play pretend. Pirates one day, astronauts the next. I lay on the creaky bed, staring at the ceiling, the whiskey still warm in my veins. Sleep wouldn't come. Not with Julian's words echoing in my head. I thought I could be someone else. By 2 a.m. I gave up. I slipped into the hallway, the house dark except for a sliver of light under the kitchen door. I moved quietly, drawn by the faint clink of glass. Julian was there, sitting at the table, a bottle of bourbon in front of him. He didn't look surprised to see me. "Can't sleep either?" he asked, his voice rough. I shook my head, pulling out a chair. "This place, it's like stepping back in time." He snorted, pouring me a drink. "Yeah, except we're not kids anymore." We sat in silence, the bourbon burning my throat. The kitchen was a time capsule, same chipped mugs, same faded wallpaper. I could almost see us at 10, sneaking cookies from the jar, giggling like we'd pulled off a heist. But the memory soured when I thought of that last summer, the one that changed everything. "Remember Miller's Pond?" I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Julian stiffened, his fingers tightening around his glass. "Yeah. We were so stupid," I said, trying to keep it light. "Thought we could catch that giant catfish with a stick and some string." He didn't smile. "That's not what you meant." I swallowed, my pulse quickening. He was right. I wasn't talking about fishing. I was talking about the night we sat under the oak tree, the air thick with fireflies, when I leaned in, heart pounding, and kissed him. It was clumsy, quick, but it had set my world on fire. He'd kissed me back, just for a moment, before pulling away, his face pale with fear. "I'm sorry," I said now, the words heavy, "for leaving, for not saying goodbye." Julian's eyes met mine, raw and searching. "Why didn't you?" "I was scared," I admitted, "of what it meant, of what people would say. My dad, he already hated me for existing. If he knew." Julian nodded, his expression softening. "My dad wasn't much better. After you left, he found out. About me. About us." My stomach dropped. "What did he do?" Julian's laugh was bitter. "What do you think? Called me every name in the book. Sent me to church camp to fix me. I learned to keep my mouth shut." I reached for his hand, then stopped myself. "I should have stayed." "No," he said sharply. "You got out. You got to be you." "And you didn't?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked away, his jaw tight. "I tried. Mara, she's good for me. She's kind. She doesn't ask questions I can't answer." "But you're not happy," I said, the truth spilling out. He didn't respond, just took another sip of bourbon. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of crickets outside. I wanted to shake him, to make him see he didn't have to hide anymore. But who was I to talk? I'd spent years running from myself, from him. The back door creaked open, and Mara stepped in, her hair mussed from sleep. "You two still up?" she asked, her voice light but her eyes sharp. "Just catching up," Julian said, his tone flat. Mara's gaze flicked between us, lingering on the bourbon, the tension. "I'm heading back to bed. Don't stay up too late." When she was gone, Julian stood, his chair scraping the floor. "I should sleep." "Julian," I started, but he cut me off. "Don't, Ethan. Just don't." He left me there, the kitchen swallowing his footsteps. I stayed until dawn, the bourbon bottle half empty, my mind replaying that night at Miller's Pond. I'd come back to Willow Creek thinking I could face the past, but now I wasn't sure. All I knew was that Julian was slipping away again, and I couldn't let it happen. Not this time. Morning came too soon, the sunlight harsh through the kitchen window. Mara was already up, brewing coffee, her smile bright but brittle. "Sleep okay?" she asked. "Fine," I lied. "Where's Julian?" "Out for a run. He does that when he's stressed." She handed me a mug, her eyes searching mine. "You two were close, huh?" "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. "We were." She nodded, stirring her coffee. "He's different when he talks about you. Like he's alive." Her words hit hard, a mix of hope and guilt. Before I could respond, Julian burst through the door, sweaty and breathless. "Morning," he said, avoiding my gaze. The day unfolded in a blur of small-town normalcy. Mara insisted we visit the local farmer's market, dragging us through stalls of apples and handmade soaps. Julian was quiet, his smiles forced, but Mara filled the silence with chatter. I watched them together, searching for cracks. Mara's hand brushed Julian's, and he didn't pull away, but there was no spark, no warmth. By afternoon, we ended up at a park, the three of us sprawled on a blanket under a willow tree. Mara napped, her head on Julian's lap, while he stared at the horizon. I took a chance. "Jules," I said softly, using the old nickname. "Are you sure about this? About her?" He flinched, his eyes darting to Mara. "Don't do this, Ethan." "I'm not trying to mess things up," I said. I see you, and you're not okay." He looked at me then, his eyes burning with something I couldn't name. "You don't know what it's like," he whispered, To stay, to pretend, to want something you can't have. My heart pounded. You can have it. You can have me. The words hung between us, raw and reckless. For a moment, I thought he'd lean in, close the distance. But then Mara stirred, and he pulled back, his face shuddering. We should head back, he said, standing. The rest of the day was a haze. I kept my distance, watching Julian and Mara move through their routines. Cooking dinner, laughing at old movies. But every glance Julian stole my way felt like a lifeline, pulling me closer to the truth neither of us could ignore. Dinner that night was tense, the clink of forks louder than our conversation. Mara tried to keep things light, telling stories about her latest design project, but Julian barely responded. I caught his eye across the table, and for a second the world fell away, just him and me like it used to be. After dinner, Mara suggested a walk to clear the air. The streets of Willow Creek were quiet, the air crisp with autumn. We wandered past old haunts, the library where we'd hidden from bullies, the diner where we'd shared milkshakes. Mara walked between us, linking arms with Julian, but his steps were heavy, his gaze distant. You okay, Jules? Mara asked, her voice soft but edged with worry. Fine, he said too quickly. She stopped, turning to face him. You're not. You've been weird since Ethan got here. My stomach twisted. I wanted to disappear, to undo whatever I'd stirred up. But Julian just shook his head. It's nothing, Mara. Let's keep walking. She didn't move. It's not nothing. You're shutting me out. Mara, please, he said, his voice cracking. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing. Is it him? Did something happen? I froze, my heart in my throat. Julian's face went pale, his hands clenched at his sides. Mara, stop. No, she said, her voice rising. I deserve to know. You've been different since that email. Since you asked him to come. The street felt too small, the air too thin. I wanted to run, but my feet were rooted. Julian's eyes met mine, pleading, but for what, I didn't know. It's not what you think, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Mara laughed, sharp and brittle. Don't lie to me, Jules. I'm not stupid. She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the dark. Julian didn't follow. He just stood there, his shoulders slumped, like the weight of the world had finally broken him. Julian, I said, stepping closer. Go after her. He shook his head, his eyes wet. I can't. Not anymore. We walked back to the house in silence. The distance between us both a chasm and a thread pulling us closer. Inside, Mara was in the living room, her arms crossed, her face a mix of anger and hurt. I need the truth, she said, her voice steady now. Both of you. Julian sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. I stood by the door, my heart racing. This was it, the moment everything would break or heal. I'm not who you think I am, Julian said finally, his voice barely audible. I've been trying to be, but I can't. Mara's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. Say it, Jules. Say what you've been hiding. He looked up, his gaze locking with mine. I'm in love with him. I always have been. The words hit like a tidal wave, washing away years of doubt and fear. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Mara's face crumpled, but she didn't cry. She just nodded like she'd known all along. I thought I could fix you, she whispered. I thought I could be enough. You are enough, Julian said, his voice breaking. But I'm not. I'm not enough for you. She stood, grabbing her coat. I need time, she said, and then she was gone, the door slamming behind her. The silence was suffocating. Julian looked at me, his eyes raw with guilt and relief. I didn't mean to hurt her, he said. I know, I said, crossing the room to sit beside him. But you can't keep pretending. He laughed, a broken sound. Pretending's all I know, Ethan. This town, these people, they don't let you be anything else. Then leave, I said, my voice fierce. Come with me. Start over. He shook his head. It's not that simple. Why not? I demanded, grabbing his hand. His skin was warm, familiar, and for the first time in years, I felt anchored. We were kids back then, scared and stupid. We're not anymore. We can choose this. Choose us. He looked at me, his eyes searching, and for a moment, I thought he'd say yes. But then he pulled his hand away. I need to think, he said, standing. I need time. He left me there, the house swallowing him again. I sat alone, my heart pounding with hope and fear. I'd come back to Willow Creek for answers, but all I'd found were more questions. And the biggest one, could Julian let go of the life he'd built to chase the one we'd lost? The next morning, the house was too quiet. Mara hadn't come back, and Julian was nowhere to be found. I wandered the rooms, my eyes catching on small details. A dog-eared book of poetry on the coffee table. A photo of Julian and Mara at a beach, both smiling but not touching. My chest ached with guilt. I hadn't meant to break them apart, but I couldn't deny the truth Julian had spoken. I found him in the backyard, sitting on an old swing we'd built as kids. The ropes were frayed, but it held his weight as he swayed gently, his gaze lost in the horizon. You okay? I asked, sitting on the grass beside him. He didn't answer right away. I don't know what I am anymore, he said finally. I thought I had it figured out. Mara, the wedding, this life, it was supposed to be enough. But it wasn't, I said, my voice soft. He looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. No, because of you. The words were a confession, a wound, a promise. I reached for his hand, and this time he didn't pull away. His fingers laced with mine, tentative but sure, and for a moment we were 16 again under the oak tree, the world full of possibility. I never stopped thinking about you, I said, my voice raw. Every photo I took, every city I wandered, it was all to find something that felt like you. He smiled, small and sad. You always were a romantic. Only for you, I said, and he laughed, the sound breaking the tension. We sat there, the swing creaking, the morning sun warm on our faces. For the first time since I'd arrived, the weight of the past felt lighter, like we could carry it together. But then his phone buzzed, and his face darkened as he read the message. Mara, he said, standing. She wants to talk. My heart sank, but I nodded. Go. You owe her that. He left, and I stayed in the backyard, the swing still swaying in his absence. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher, and I tried not to imagine what they were saying. When Julian returned, his face was unreadable, but his shoulders were straighter, like he'd shed a burden. She's leaving, he said, sitting beside me again. She's going to stay with her sister in Richmond. She knew Ethan. Deep down, she always knew. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. He shook his head. Don't be. She deserves better. Someone who can love her the way she needs. And you? I asked, my voice trembling. What do you deserve? He looked at me, his eyes steady. I don't know yet, but I want to find out. That night, we cooked dinner together. A simple pasta dish that felt like a ritual. We laughed over old memories, danced around the kitchen to a scratchy vinyl record, and for the first time, I saw Julian unguarded, free. After dinner, we sat on the porch, the stars bright above us. I'm scared, he admitted, his voice low, of what this means, of what people will say. I know, I said, taking his hand. But you're not alone anymore. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my cheek. Promise. Promise? I whispered, and then his lips were on mine, soft and hesitant, but real. It wasn't like the kiss at Miller's Pond, all fear and uncertainty. This was a beginning, a choice, a step toward something true. We stayed there, wrapped in each other until the night grew cold. Inside, we fell asleep on the couch, his head on my chest, the house quiet around us. For the first time in years, I felt whole. The next few days were a blur of quiet moments and hard truths. Julian and I really talked, for the first time in years, about the fear that had kept us apart, the lives we tried to build without each other, the dreams we still carried. He told me about the years after I left, the loneliness, the pressure to be someone he wasn't. I told him about Chicago, the endless nights chasing fleeting connections, always searching for him in strangers' faces. Willow Creek felt different now, less like a cage and more like a place we could reclaim. We walked its streets openly, hand in hand, ignoring the curious glances from neighbors. It wasn't easy. Julian flinched at every stare, every whisper, but he didn't let go. On my last day, we drove to Miller's Pond, the place where it all began. The oak tree was still there, its branches heavy with memory. We sat beneath it, the water shimmering in the afternoon light. "I'm coming with you," Julian said suddenly, his voice steady. "To Chicago, or wherever you're going next." I turned to him, my heart racing. "You sure?" He nodded, his eyes bright. "I've spent too long running from myself. I want to be brave. With you." I kissed him then, under the oak tree, the same place where we'd faltered 10 years ago. This time, there was no fear, only certainty. We were choosing each other, choosing truth, choosing a life that was ours. We left Willow Creek the next morning, Julian's belongings packed into my car. The house stood empty behind us, a chapter closed. As we drove past the town limits, Julian reached for my hand, his smile brighter than the sun. "I'm scared," he said, but there was no weight to the words. "Me too," I said, squeezing his hand. "But we'll figure it out. Together." The road stretched ahead, open and unknown, but for the first time it didn't feel like running. It felt like coming home. The story of Ethan and Julian isn't just about love. It's about courage, about breaking free from the shadows of fear and expectation. It's about the messy, beautiful work of becoming who you are, and the people who hold your hand through it. That night in Willow Creek changed everything. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. And sometimes real is enough.